Hello, my dear friends. I'm happy to see you here again. Tell me, have you ever had that feeling as if the world around you seems to be speeding up a bit while you feel like you're slowing down? Or that familiar tasks suddenly require more effort, more preparation, and sometimes seem completely overwhelming? It's such a subtle sensation, as if the ground beneath your feet has become a bit less solid, as if you're somewhat losing control. This feeling creeps up unnoticed, like a quiet evening fog, and many of us, having crossed the 70-year threshold, simply write it off as age. But what if I told you that often it's not just about the years? It's about insidious small habits that, like invisible threads, day by day entangle us, robbing us of strength, energy, and a sense of confidence. We ourselves, without noticing, give away our strength to things that seem harmless, or even like a well-deserved rest. It could be your favorite cozy armchair, which has become almost a part of you. It could be the habit of snacking on whatever's convenient, because cooking for one seems too troublesome. It could be the silence in the house, which you mistake for peace, rather than detachment from the world. These habits, like weeds in a well-tended garden, slowly crowd out our vitality. But there's good news. We can pull these weeds out by the roots. I promise you that after our conversation today, you will look at some of your daily rituals completely differently. You will learn how simple, accessible changes can bring back your vigor, clarity of mind, and, most importantly, the feeling that you are in the driver's seat of your life, not just a passenger. No complicated diets, exhausting workouts, or expensive medications. Just common sense and a little bit of goodwill. Stay with me until the end, and let's together reclaim the ease and joy of each day. Perhaps one of the most common traps we fall into with age is an excessive love for sitting. Sounds mundane, doesn't it? I've earned my rest, you think, and you are absolutely right. But there is a huge difference between necessary rest and an almost complete lack of movement when a favorite armchair or sofa becomes the center of our world. It's like we become fused to them, and getting up becomes harder each time, not just physically, but mentally too. We need to find the strength within ourselves to replace these long hours of immobility with short but regular periods of activity, even the gentlest, simplest kind. Let me tell you the story of Arthur. He's 74. Arthur is a great lover of books and crosswords. His old leather armchair was his throne, his sanctuary. He could sit in it for hours, immersed in reading or contemplation, absolutely convinced that after a long working life, he deserved this peace. But gradually, he began to notice alarming signs. Getting up to the second floor to the bedroom became a whole ordeal, a trip to the corner store, already a feat. Even bending down to pick up a fallen newspaper caused shortness of breath and unpleasant back sensations. He began asking his wife more and more often to bring him this or that, feeling awkward but stubbornly blaming it all on old age. A quiet frustration with his own weakness was building inside, but he pushed these thoughts away. What can you do? The years take their toll, he sighed, feeling his world shrinking to the size of the room and the armchair turning from a friend into a jailer. When his daughter gently, very tactfully suggested he start doing simple joint exercises, literally while sitting in a chair, and go out for at least a 5-minute walk around the house, Arthur initially brushed it off. Nonsense. At my age, it's too late to start anything. He felt embarrassment, even a kind of shame at the very idea of these childish exercises. But his daughter was persistent and kind. She found him videos with exercises designed specifically for seniors. Arthur grumbled, but out of love for his daughter, he tried. At first, it was really difficult. Muscles, unused to the strain, ached. But after just a week, he noticed with surprise that getting out of the armchair was easier. After 2 weeks, he himself, without agonizing shortness of breath, went up to the second floor. And after a month, Arthur was already happily walking for 15 to 20 minutes and discovered that he could carry a bag of groceries from the store himself. But do you know what changed the most? Not just his physical strength, his outlook changed. That sparkle of pride in himself returned to his eyes. He stopped feeling like a burden, a passive observer of his own life. Why does this work? It's simple. Our muscles and joints are like an old but very reliable mechanism. If it's not used for a long time, it starts to rust, seize up, lose mobility. Movement is the very lubricant this mechanism needs. Even the smallest, but regular activity improves blood circulation, nourishes the joints with vital substances, maintains muscle tone, which is so important for balance and strength. And psychologically, it's an incredible feeling of regaining control over your own body. It's like getting behind the wheel of a car again after a long break. A little scary at first, but then you feel the intoxicating thrill of freedom and opening possibilities. Your body is not the enemy. It is your loyal, devoted companion, and it will respond with gratitude to your care. You will feel a surge of energy. Your mood will improve, and the stiffness in your movements will disappear. So, maybe right now, as you listen to me, you'll feel the urge to stand up and just walk around the room, or look outside and take a few steps in the yard, breathe in some fresh air. Your body will be very grateful. But even if we start moving more, where do we get the energy for this activity? After all, our body, like a car, needs proper, high-quality fuel. And here lies another subtle trap that many of us fall into, especially when living alone, or when cooking starts to seem too tiresome. I'm talking about the subtle impoverishment of our diet. What should we try to replace? The habit of grabbing quick, simple snacks, cookies, buns, sandwiches, and skipping proper meals. Replace it with balanced nutrition, providing enough protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Let's remember Eleanor. She's 78. After her beloved husband passed away, she completely lost interest in cooking. "Who is there to make an effort for now?" she said bitterly. Her day often began with a cup of tea and a couple of cookies. Lunch might be a sandwich or tea with something sweet again. Dinner, if it happened at all, was very light, almost symbolic. The natural result was constant, exhausting fatigue, apathy, brain fog, and difficulty concentrating. Maybe my blood pressure is acting up, or perhaps it's the weather, she thought, not connecting her condition to her diet. It seemed to her that she simply had no appetite, and forcing herself to eat normal food felt like some kind of violation. This chronic fatigue and mental confusion became her constant companions, making her increasingly dependent on her children's help even for the simplest household tasks. Her granddaughter visiting her noticed this sad pattern. She acted wisely. She didn't lecture or reproach her. She simply started bringing containers with simple but nutritious and tasty food, fragrant chicken broth with tender pieces of chicken, a bright vegetable stew, cottage cheese with fresh berries. And she simply suggested Eleanor eat together for company. At first, Eleanor ate reluctantly, almost forcing herself just not to offend her granddaughter. But after just a few days, she was surprised to feel the morning brain fog lifting noticeably faster. That she didn't feel so sleepy after lunch as before. That she found the energy not only to passively watch TV, but also to read an interesting book, or even call an old friend she hadn't spoken to in a long time. She herself started asking her granddaughter to bring that delicious soup. Gradually, not only did her appetite return, but also the desire to cook something simple for herself, boil an egg for breakfast, make a light salad of fresh vegetables. Why is this so important? Let's figure it out. Simple carbohydrates, all that white bread, pastries, sweets, are like a quick but very short-lived firework for our body. They give a sharp, almost instant burst of energy due to a blood sugar spike, but this spike is just as quickly followed by a crash in energy, drowsiness, and even irritability. It's like a roller coaster for your body, a sharp climb and then a steep drop. But protein, which we get from meat, poultry, fish, eggs, cottage cheese, legumes, and fiber from vegetables, fruits, whole grains, are a completely different story. They are like the steady, long, warming burn of a log in the fireplace. They give us stable, long-lasting energy, nourish our brain, help our digestion work smoothly, and maintain muscle mass, which is so important with age. This is the true foundation of our well-being. Imagine your body as a car you cherish. You wouldn't fill it with low-quality, questionable fuel that would make it sputter, stall, and eventually break down, would you? So why do we sometimes treat ourselves so carelessly? By nourishing yourself properly, you give yourself high-quality fuel for an active life, for a clear mind, for a good mood. Maybe tonight for dinner, you'll try adding a small piece of boiled chicken or fish to your usual side dish, or eat a juicy apple instead of the usual candy. Your energy, your well-being, will give you a sincere thank you. When we are full of energy thanks to proper nutrition and movement, we want to share this energy. We crave connection, warmth, participation. But what happens if silence gradually thickens around us? If the phone remains silent for weeks and days become indistinguishable, like 2 drops of water? Gradually, unnoticed by ourselves, we can find ourselves in another trap, the trap of social isolation. With age, our social circle naturally shrinks. Friends move away, pass away, children and grandchildren are absorbed in their own lives, and the silence at home starts to feel like an inevitable norm. What's important to change here? Passive waiting for calls and visits. Replace it with actively, even if modestly, creating and maintaining social connections. Meet George. He's 80. All his life, he was the life of the party, a sociable and open person. But recent years became a real trial for him. His beloved wife died, old friends had moved away or also passed on. The phone, which used to ring constantly, could now stay silent for weeks. Days merged into a monotonous routine. TV, newspaper, a short, joyless walk to the store and back. He felt acutely lonely, abandoned, and useless, but was terrified of imposing. Everyone has their own lives, their own problems. Why should I bother them with my old man talk? He thought bitterly, looking at photos of his smiling grandchildren. This oppressive silence weighed on him, creating deep melancholy and a growing sense of helplessness. It began to seem to him that his life had essentially ended, only the appearance remained. One day, his neighbor, seeing his depressed state, literally took him by the hand and brought him to a meeting of the gardening club held at the local community center. George was extremely self-conscious. He felt he would be out of place there, like a fish out of water among strangers. But the people turned out to be surprisingly friendly. They were united by a shared interest, a common passion. They lively discussed seedlings, shared secrets of growing tomatoes, argued about rose varieties. At first, George mostly listened, smiling timidly, but then he imperceptibly got drawn into the conversation. He remembered how long ago, at their old dacha, he used to lovingly fuss over roses. This meeting became a real outlet for him, a breath of fresh air. He started going to the club every week, and then, mustering his courage, he called an old army buddy he hadn't spoken to in years. To his great surprise and joy, his friend was incredibly happy to hear from him. They talked for almost an hour, reminiscing about their youth, sharing news. George again felt part of something larger than his quiet, lonely apartment. He felt alive. Why is connection so vitally important to us, especially in later life? We are social beings. That's how we're wired. Communication is not just an exchange of words and information. It's a deep exchange of energy, emotions, warmth. It's what nourishes our brain and our soul. It's scientifically proven that when we interact with people we like, our brain produces so-called happiness hormones, oxytocin, serotonin. These are our natural antidepressants. Furthermore, communication stimulates mental activity. It makes us think, remember, choose words, formulate thoughts. Psychologically, it provides an invaluable feeling of belonging to a group, a sense of being needed, confirms our significance in this world. It's like watering a houseplant. Without water, it will inevitably wither, no matter how beautiful and strong it was initially. Social connections are life-giving water for our soul. Loneliness, conversely, can exacerbate feelings of helplessness, anxiety, and even negatively impact our physical health, increasing the risks of many diseases. Think about it. Maybe there's someone you've wanted to call for a long time but hesitated, an old friend, a distant relative, a former colleague, or perhaps, right near you, there's a club based on interests. Book club, chess, crafts, a library, a volunteer organization, where you could meet like-minded people. Take a small, tiny step towards people, and you will be surprised to see how the world around you will begin to fill with color and sound again. The desire to communicate, to stay connected with loved ones, especially if they live far away, often bumps up against another modern barrier, the world of technology. All these smartphones, tablets, computers, many of us look at them with apprehension, even some fear, thinking, "Oh, this is too complicated for me, I'll never figure it out." And this thought, this internal resistance, subtly robs us of another piece of control over our lives, making us dependent on others' help for the simplest things. What can we try to change here? Complete avoidance of modern gadgets and online services. Replace it with gradually mastering at least one or two functions that can genuinely make your life easier and expand your possibilities. Look at Martha. She's 72. Her children and beloved grandchildren lived in another city. She missed them terribly, but all their communication was limited to rare and rather short phone calls. The smartphone her children gave her seemed like something hostile, incomprehensible, with a bunch of small, intimidating icons. Pay bills online, book a doctor's appointment via the internet, God forbid. I don't understand any of this. It's all for young people. And besides, it's dangerous. I might accidentally send money to scammers, she said, relying completely on her daughter's help to handle these matters, even if it meant her daughter had to travel from far away. She felt a bit stupid and hopelessly behind the times, and this feeling of helplessness in the face of smart machines depressed and upset her greatly. Her 15-year-old grandson, visiting for the holidays, decided to fix the situation. He acted very wisely. He didn't overwhelm his grandmother with complex information or try to teach her everything at once. He simply installed one single program for video calls on her old but functional tablet, choosing one with large, clear buttons with pictures. And then patiently, step by step, without a hint of irritation, he showed Martha how to call her mom, his mom, Martha's daughter, and himself. The first few times, Martha got confused, pressed the wrong things, and got very nervous. But when she first saw her grandson's smiling face on the screen, waving at her from his room, her heart literally melted with happiness. It was a real miracle. She could see her relatives, see their smiles, their eyes, despite the hundreds of miles separating them. Inspired by this first success, she later asked her grandson herself to teach her how to use the internet search to find new pie recipes and useful gardening tips, a hobby she enjoyed. Then, more boldly, she mastered ordering groceries online, which turned out to be incredibly convenient. Why is this so important? Technology isn't some abstract evil created to confuse us. It's just a tool that, when used correctly, can make our lives significantly more convenient, safer, and, importantly, more interesting. Mastering even a simple skill like video calling breaks down the barriers of distance, allows us to maintain close emotional connections with loved ones, see their faces, which is incredibly important for our emotional well-being. The ability to independently, without outside help, pay a utility bill or book a doctor's appointment, order necessary groceries or medications, all this provides an invaluable sense of independence and self-confidence. It's a bit like learning to use a new convenient tool in the garden, a little unfamiliar and even scary at first, but then you realize how much easier it makes your work and how much time and effort it saves. Plus, there's a physiological benefit. Learning something new, even how to use a gadget, stimulates our brain, makes it work, creates new neural connections, helps maintain its activity and plasticity. And psychologically, it's a small but very important victory over your own fear. Prove to yourself that you are still capable of learning new things and adapting to a changing world. You don't need to strive to become a tech guru and understand everything. But maybe there is one thing, one function, that could really be useful to you and make your life easier. Video calls with relatives, the ability to read news or favorite books on a tablet with large font. Ask someone close to you whom you trust, children, grandchildren, perhaps more tech-savvy neighbors, to help you master that one specific skill. Patiently, without rushing, at a comfortable pace for you. You will be pleasantly surprised how it can change your sense of connection with the world and your own self-esteem. Mastering something new, whether it's video calls or online shopping, is not only convenient, it's also excellent training for our mind. But when we allow our brain to go into well-deserved retirement, thinking we've done our share of thinking, that now we can relax and go with the flow, we risk falling into another insidious trap, the trap of mental passivity. Retirement, a settled, measured rhythm of life. All this can lead to our brain, accustomed to workloads, starting to idle, losing its sharpness and flexibility. What's important to replace here? Passive consumption of information, like hours of mindless TV watching, and performing the same routine mental tasks, like doing the same type of crossword puzzle for years. Replace it with active mental engagement that requires some effort, makes the brain stretch, and is also enjoyable. Listen to the story of David. He's 75. Previously, he was a respected history professor at a college. Upon retiring, he initially felt huge relief. No more lectures, student papers, lesson plans. He gladly immersed himself in a calm, measured life. Read the morning papers, watch the news on TV, methodically solved the same type of crossword every single day. But over time, he began to notice with concern that it was getting harder to find the right words in conversation, that his memory started failing him in small ways, that new names and facts were hard to remember or not remembered at all. He instinctively started avoiding complex topics, afraid of seeming incompetent or forgetful. My brain is tired from years of work. It's time for it to finally rest. He justified it to himself, but deep down, he felt growing boredom and anxiety about the obvious decline in his cognitive abilities. His wife, seeing her husband's apathy and worry, once suggested he attend a lecture on Renaissance art being given at the local library. David resisted for a long time. Why do I need that? I've done my share of studying, that's enough. But his wife was persistent and managed to persuade him. To his own surprise, the lecture turned out to be incredibly interesting. It made his brain work, think, analyze, draw parallels, recall things he once knew from history. After the lecture, a lively discussion started, and David was surprised to find that he had things to say, that others found his thoughts interesting and listened with genuine attention. It truly shook him up, invigorated him. Inspired by this experience, he joined a book club at the same library, where they discussed contemporary novels, a genre he hadn't been particularly interested in before. And then he even started learning a little Italian using a simple online app, not for any specific purpose, but just for himself, just so his brain wouldn't completely rust, as he himself joked. Why is mental activity so important for us throughout life, and especially in later years? Our brain possesses a truly amazing property that scientists call neuroplasticity. This means it is capable of changing, reorganizing, creating new connections between nerve cells, neurons, throughout our entire lives. But for this process to occur, the brain needs work, new tasks, challenges. Imagine our brain like a muscle. If you don't train it regularly, it will inevitably weaken and atrophy. Passive consumption of information, like watching TV, is like lying on the couch and just watching other people exercise. But solving a new, unfamiliar problem, learning something new, a foreign language, art history, the rules of a new game, actively participating in a discussion, this is real, effective brain training. It helps maintain and improve memory, attention, reaction speed, mental flexibility. And, of course, psychologically, it provides a sense of growth, development, an inexhaustible interest in life, confidence in one's intellectual abilities. It is perhaps the best remedy for boredom, apathy, and the fear of mental decline. What might interest you specifically? Maybe starting to read books in a new genre or by a new author, trying to research your family history, creating a family tree, learning to play chess, checkers, or another board game that requires strategy. Trying Sudoku, Japanese crosswords, or more complex logic puzzles. Absolutely any activity that makes your brain work a little harder than it's used to, that gives it a small challenge, will be incredibly beneficial. Don't be afraid to give your wise brain an interesting task. It will only be grateful. Keeping the mind sharp, learning new things, staying physically and socially active, all this is wonderful and very important. But there is something else that affects our well-being, our sense of strength or helplessness, perhaps even more strongly than all of the above. It's what constantly echoes within us, our inner voice, our own mindset. It's how we treat ourselves and our age. It's when we start to unconsciously believe the common stereotypes about old age and try them on like tight, uncomfortable clothes. Oh, I'm too old for that. Well, what do you expect? It's normal at my age. There's nothing you can do about it, nothing to change. This passive acceptance of perceived or real age-related limitations and constant negative internal dialogue. This is perhaps the most insidious thief of our strength. What should we try to replace? This gloomy outlook, replace it with a conscious focus on what you can still do, on gratitude for the opportunities you have, and on a positive, accepting view of life. Look at Susan. She's 79. A few months ago, she had a bad fall at home. Luckily, there were no serious injuries, just bruises, but the incident frightened her badly. After that, she became very cautious, even overly cautious. She practically stopped going for walks alone, even in good weather, terrified of falling again. She neglected her beloved little garden by the house because bending down is difficult and dangerous now. She started declining invitations to family celebrations and meetings with friends, saying, "I'll only burden you there with my frailty." She sincerely believed she was acting correctly, reasonably, and realistically, looking out for her safety. But her world shrank with each passing day, and along with it, the joy of life subtly faded away. She spoke more and more often about her ailments, about how the best years are behind her, about how good things used to be. She had trapped herself, with her own thoughts and fears, in a tight cage of limitations, blaming it all on inevitable old age. Her physical therapist, who worked with her on regaining confidence in her movements after the fall, noticed this subdued mood. He was a wise person and understood that exercises alone were not enough. He talked a lot with Susan. He helped her see and realize that reasonable caution is not the same as completely giving up on activity in life. He suggested simple modifications to familiar tasks, for example, working in the garden, not by bending over, but by sitting on a special low stool, or using convenient raised garden beds. Walk, definitely walk, but perhaps with an elegant cane or a lightweight walker for more confidence, but walk. He patiently taught her to focus her attention not on what she feared and couldn't do, but on what she could still do safely and enjoyably. He even suggested a simple exercise. Every evening before bed, write down in a notebook 3 things she was grateful for that day. At first, Susan regarded all this with great skepticism. Grateful for what? For barely being able to walk? But she tried, and gradually, day by day, she began to notice that the world around wasn't so hostile and dangerous, that she could plant her favorite pansies while sitting on the stool, that a leisurely walk on a sunny autumn day brought immense joy, that talking with her grandchildren, even if they just sat nearby and chatted, charged her with incredible energy. She slowly but surely stopped thinking of herself as an old wreck and saw again in the mirror a woman who loves life and is still capable of enjoying it. Why does our inner attitude have such colossal power? It's because our thoughts directly influence our feelings, emotions, and even physiological processes in our body. Constant negativity, fears, expecting the worst cause our body to produce increased amounts of stress hormones like cortisol, and they, in turn, weaken the immune system, raise blood pressure, worsen digestion, and general well-being. A positive attitude, however, the ability to find good even in small things, focusing on possibilities, a sense of gratitude, all this, conversely, promotes the production of endorphins, happiness hormones, improves mood, gives strength, and can even contribute to longevity. This doesn't mean denying real health problems or pretending they don't exist. Not at all. It means not allowing these problems and fears to define your entire life, your entire identity. It's like looking at a glass of water. Is it half empty or half full? The choice of perspective is always yours. Accepting your age is not resignation to helplessness and decline, but the wisdom and ability to use the resources you have in the best possible way, with gratitude and dignity. Take a moment to reflect. What limiting beliefs about your age and abilities do you personally hold? What phrases do you often tell yourself, mentally or out loud? Try to simply observe your thoughts, catch yourself being negative, and gently, without judgment, replace it with something more positive, constructive, and realistic. Focus on what you can do today. Find what brings you joy, even if it's something very small and simple, a cup of fragrant tea in the morning, a sunbeam on the wall, a phone call with a friend, a beautiful melody on the radio. Your attitude towards yourself is an incredibly powerful tool that can either rob you of your last strength or, conversely, fill you to the brim with it. So you see, my dear friends, often that oppressive feeling of helplessness that can creep up on us after 70 doesn't come from the number on your passport, not from the fact of age itself. It comes from these small, almost invisible habits that we ourselves, sometimes unconsciously, cultivate day after day in our lives. Excessive rest that turns into immobility, impoverished, irregular nutrition, the silence of loneliness that we accept as the norm, fear of the new and incomprehensible, mental laziness disguised as well-deserved rest, and of course, a pessimistic outlook on life when we label ourselves with old age. All these are quiet but very persistent thieves of our strength, our energy, our independence. But the most important, most hopeful part of this whole story is that changing all this is in our hands. You have lived long, incredibly rich lives. You have accumulated an invaluable wealth of experience, wisdom, resilience. You have seen ups and downs. You have coped with difficulties that today's young people can hardly imagine. And you absolutely, without any doubt, deserve to feel good, energetic, confident, and joyful at any age. You have the full, inalienable right to enjoy each new day, to be as active as your health allows, to remain curious, to feel needed and loved. Please, don't let insidious habits or dark thoughts steal this well-deserved joy from you. Start small, with just one thing. Choose one thing from what we talked about today, the one that resonated most with your soul, and take a small, tiny step towards change today or tomorrow. Be kind and patient with yourselves, as kind as you would be to your closest loved one. Remind yourselves often of your inner strength, your accumulated wisdom. You are capable of much, much more than you might sometimes think. Believe in yourselves, please. Believe in your strength, and you will definitely succeed. You can do it. You are wonderful.